Do you work for a micromanager? Okay, first of all, I'd like to offer my sincere condolences, but stay tuned because in this video, you're going to learn what to do about it. If you're watching this video, it's likely that you have a micromanager as a boss. Like I said, I am sorry. My name is Dr. Patricia Thompson. I am a corporate psychologist and executive coach. I've coached a lot of micromanagers and I have also worked for micromanagers and it's not fun. I remember I had this one boss who was a micromanager and it was such a stressful experience because I know that I'm competent at what I do. That's why he hired me. Yet he was always into the details, way more than he needed to be. He would look over everything that was good and nitpick on some minuscule detail, be all over it. And after a while, it just became really frustrating and very demotivating. So if you do have that kind of boss, I'm sorry, but let's get into some things that you can do about it. But before you do, make sure to like and subscribe if you're not already, click the bell, and let's get into some specific strategies for dealing with a micromanaging boss. Okay, so my first tip might seem obvious, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention it. Tip number one is to make sure that you're performing at a high level. If you're being micromanaged because you're not doing your job properly, then of course your boss has to manage you more closely. Maybe you have a boss who really doesn't want to be a micromanager, but he or she is having to look over everything that you do because you can't be trusted to perform well. If that's you, then I'm sorry, but get your act together and make sure that you're performing at a higher level, and there's a higher likelihood that perhaps your boss's micromanaging behavior will stop. Okay, so for tip number two, we're going to get into your boss's mind. Let's assume that your work product is good and you just have a boss who micromanages everyone. What do? You got to figure out what it is that your boss needs. Some people might micromanage out of a need for control. Some might do it because they're perfectionists. Some might do it because they're anxious. Some might do it because they have FOMO somehow in the professional realm and don't want to miss out and want to know everything that's going on. So what I want you to do is take a step back and try to figure out, what do I think is driving my boss's micromanagement? And you might even, if you have some colleagues who have issues with micromanagement with your boss, try and get into their heads too and ask them, what do you think is behind this? Then what you want to do is try to basically satisfy that need to the best of your ability. You're probably not going to be able to do it 100%, but at least you'll be able to deal with some of the underlying anxiety. For example, I had a boss the same one, who didn't always trust that people were going to get things done. He had a high need for control. And so what I did was over-communicate with him, basically, and just let him know what was happening before he had to ask. And then he didn't have to worry in that way, and he started to trust me more and micromanaged me less. For people who are perfectionists, make sure you're double and triple checking things. And it might seem like, why do I have to do that? But, your goal is to be able to satisfy that need so that you'll be taking control instead of them breathing down your neck. If you have someone who's just generally anxious, then again, you want to communicate and let them know that you're on top of stuff. If you have a one-on-one meeting with someone, you might talk about the strategy you plan to take, give them benchmarks in terms of when you're going to get certain things to them, and then get it to them during that time. Because if someone has a high sense of urgency and they really want to know what's happening, then at least knowing when they can expect what might get them off of your back a little bit. But the underarching theme here is just really try and figure out, why is this person doing it? What does it seem to be that they need? And then try to scratch that itch. The last thing I would recommend is to try to have a conversation with your boss, particularly if it's a kind of environment where your boss is a micromanager, but is also a pretty reasonable person. I often coach leaders who know that they're micromanagers. They don't want to be, but they're open to talking about it. And then instead of saying, hey boss, why are you micromanaging me? Try to avoid the term micromanagement because it can be emotionally charged. You could use terms like, you're giving me a lot more structure than I'm used to, or, it seems like you're more into the details of my work than what I'm accustomed to, or, I'm used to having a little more autonomy, so I wanted to get a sense of how you think things are going in our work. And then try to understand from your boss's perspective why you're getting that less structure or why there's so much into the details. There could be a good reason, potentially, like if you're underperforming, or it could be that your boss realizes that they have an issue with micromanagement. And maybe in that sense, you can clarify what are the sorts of things that I can do to give you a sense of comfort so that you don't have to feel like you need to be in all the details. For people who micromanage, I'm not going to say this is going to work 100%, but I think your goal really should be just to get some autonomy or to get them off of your back a little bit. But by having an open discussion about it, it can be therefore something that you can talk across time and kind of check in to see how it's going. And hopefully, you'll get yourself in a better situation with your boss. The last thing I would say is I have seen people who have successfully gotten over micromanagement, but for some, it's almost like an addiction and they just can't help themselves. And if you have that sort of a leader who you're working for and you really can't take it, then you might just want to start looking for something else. I'm not saying quit your job before you have something else going, but often when people leave their jobs, it's because they are just not a fit with their leader or their leader is not a fit for them. And so look for something else. Life is too short to be in a job that you hate. Okay, so that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and found some tips that are helpful. Again, make sure to hit the bell so that you'll be notified when I make new videos. And in the comments, leave me what's worked for you with your micromanaging bosses. See you soon.